Can you drive Uber while traveling the country in an RV? You can if you stop for long enough. And so here's how this process actually works. So I'm actually shooting in my RV right now, and for the last 2 years, we actually traveled across the country, and I drove Uber in all the major metropolitan areas, such as Orlando, Denver, see here, Boston, Cincinnati, Detroit, and there was a couple others in there as well. And so when you are doing this, you're going to rent a car through Uber. So there's a surcharge to it. And also you want your driver's license to have the little star on it. That's really important. So when you're moving from place to place, you have to actually change the location where you drive. You can't do it temporarily. You have to physically change the location. When you do that, you have to resubmit for a background check. You need to make sure you press that little blue button. Even if you call them and say, hey, did I change? And they say, yes, if the little blue button on your account is not clicked, you need to click it. You have to go into the app and basically request that change of location through the customer support tab. And that location changes all the time. So change location, and make sure you click all of the tabs on your documents level to make sure that you get the background check changed. There we go. Then take your location and go to the account setting to vehicles, say find vehicles, find the rental location, rent through the Uber app. Now, if you're at a major location like Boston, get the insurance, because places like that, rocks kick up, you hit a curb, you curb check the car, you're going to be paying for that. So, in places more like Orlando, I never got the insurance down there just because, well, unless someone hits you. Well, we'll talk about being in an accident in a second. So, that brings us to the next part. So you are going to change your location, you're going to get the rental car, and then you're going to go. Some places will have an automatic re-rent, meaning at the end of the week, you'll be charged an automatic fee by keeping the car as long as you run a minimum of 30 rides per week. That's the minimum to keep the car, as I'm shooting this video. However, I found that usually will pay for the car. I usually average about $10 per ride, and that's across the country at this point. Some places like Orlando, I'd make a lot more than places like Williamsburg, Virginia. And so it depends on where you're riding on how many rides it's going to take to actually pay for the vehicle. In a 12-hour day, across the country, I have found that if you work a full 12-hour day, then you'll generally pull in somewhere between $300 and $430. That's what I averaged on a 12-hour day. Oddly enough, when I worked a 12-hour day and I didn't stop riding, even on the slow days, I would get rushes as other drivers would fall off and you'd get prioritized. So when I did work, I worked a long day. Or we'd do stuff during the day and I'd run at night. So basically, you're driving a rig, need a car, it's a great way to get it. Now, with that being said, sometimes there wouldn't be a car to have, like Cincinnati. We were there for 2 weeks. It took me a full week to get a car, so I could only run for a week. Because you have to change locations, that sometimes takes time. Okay, so now we've talked about how to change, where you go and rent. Always rent through the Uber app. Then let's talk about, like, when you're actually when you have the car, let's talk about electric or gas. Teslas were a great thing to rent through Hertz. However, depending on the location, depends on how readily speed chargers were. I never really had a problem with it. However, Hertz is trying to get rid of the cars, which means that sometimes you have to get rid of that. So, alright, now I'm driving a Kia Niro. The problem with that, though, is I only have a 50-watt charger that's near me, so it's a full 50 minutes to charge. Tesla's was closer to 25 to 30 minutes. So, if you want to make more money, it is more beneficial to have an electric car. It will cost you significantly less in gas when you're running 12-hour days. But you have to put in more time because you have to have a full 50 minutes to charge. With a gas car, it's 7.5 minutes for the most time to fill up if you don't take a restroom break, but it's significantly more when it comes to gas. So, trade-off. Longer for charging. Basically, if you can get a good gas car like a Camry, you're good to go. So electric or gas, personal preference. I tend to do electric cars because they also have bonuses. Now that bonus is run 200 rides and then basically get $210 extra dollars. So you're basically getting an extra dollar per ride for 200 rides in a 30-day period by having an electric vehicle through Hertz. As of this video recording right now, it used to be $1 per ride up to 4,000. So, and then it dropped to 2,000. And of course, Uber always changes that. So, change your location, rent your car, get your car. If you're in a destination for longer than 3 weeks, this really works. Sometimes you can automatically re-rent. Other times you will have to go back to the dealership to renew the rental depending on the state. Every state's different. Some states, after you've rented for 4 weeks, they will start auto-renewing you after that. Everywhere is different on how they do that. They say they're all the same. They're not. Orlando was very different than Detroit as far as how I got to keep the car and when I had to go in. So keep that in mind. The day you rent is important. Also, pay attention to when that Hertz location for Uber is open. Because if they're closed on Sundays, don't rent on a Monday. Which means if there's an issue, you can't go in the day before, you have to go on your rental day. So, never rent the day after they're closed, because that day is usually psychotic at those places. So, that kind of gives you a rundown. If you're traveling in an RV or traveling the country, you can easily rent through Hertz or Avis from the Uber app, and you can change states as many times as you like. But every time you do have to run a background check. In addition, if you submit the change before you leave, you will no longer be able to drive Uber. So you need to have that rental car back, then you submit the change, and it can take 2 days or it can take 2 weeks. That's the caveat. I found that after I changed states about twice, it was happening within 2 to 3 days. So I hope that's helpful if you're trying to drive Uber. And there you go. That's all I got. Have fun.